Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We're about ready to get started. If you can take your seats, and I'll invite everyone in from coffee. And just want to welcome Supervisor Eric Lucan to get us started.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome, good to see you all. So many bright faces this morning. You made it, you got here. I'm delighted on behalf of the First Five Board to welcome you all to the Marin Communications Forum. We've got a great program this morning. Before I kick things off and introduce our Executive Director, I want to recognize and introduce some of my colleagues on the First Five Commission. So if you are a First Five Commissioner, would you stand up so we can, we got Carrie Berman here. Give her a hand. Thank you. And are there any other appointed or elected officials that are here or representative of appointed or elected officials? Go ahead and stand up so we can recognize you as well. I know we got a couple coming in. But we're just so delighted that you're all here this morning. In just a little bit, I want to introduce our Executive Director, who I know you all know. But before I do so, I have to brag on her just a little bit. Because yesterday at our Board of Supervisors meeting, we had an item on our agenda which was a collaborative partnership with the West Marin Collaborative. And we, if any of you have attended public meetings, we get public comment that is, it comes in a lot of different varieties. I'll just leave it at that. Sometimes they're entertaining, sometimes they're less than constructive. But we had this item on our agenda yesterday for the West Marin Collaborative. And we had not one, not two, but 3 or 4 different people, when they called in for public comment, specifically were mentioning our Executive Director and bragging on her and all of the great work that she'd done in West Marin over the years. That is not normal to have at a Board of Supervisors meeting, for people to go out of their way in public comment to say something so positive. And as a supervisor and as a commissioner for the First Five, I was so pleased that they were bragging on the new Executive Director for First Five Marin. So with that, let's give Maria Nigel a hand. I'm going to turn it over to her. It's no surprise she has a huge fan club, and we're just so pleased that she's here in this new role. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Well, I can't say enough about the commission that I get to report to and Eric Lucan's leadership on that commission. So thank you so much, Supervisor Lucan.
Maria, I'm so sorry. One moment. If anyone wanted translation, Espanol, Patricia here can help.
Si necesitan.
Si necesita alguien traducción en español, por favor hágame saber. Tengo unos dispositivos para poder traducir. Levanten la mano el que necesite o vienen a buscarme. Gracias.
Gracias. Gracias. Well, good morning and welcome to the Marin Communications Forum. Today's event is co-sponsored by First Five Marin and by Marin County Health and Human Services. Thank you. I am Maria Patricia Nigel. I'm the new Executive Director for First Five Marin, Children and Families Commission. This is my first formal event as ED, and I look forward to many more. I am happy to welcome you to this very special forum about children's mental health and wellness. We have a robust agenda planned for you, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our speakers and from you. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this topic has touched many of us in this room, be it through our own experience or someone we love. Please make sure to stand up, move your body, take breaks if you need to, listen to what is emerging for you while we discuss this very delicate and important topic. First Five Marin is focused on the needs of children 0 to 5 and their families. We know that children's behavioral health needs are different from those of adults and are heavily influenced by stages of development. I can't help but look at Help Me Grow there in the back when I say that. We often don't connect those two, but I want to make that clear. Stages of development, environment, family, social, educational environments all impact young children. While we normally associate mental health issues with adults or young adults, it is important to understand that young children can show signs of mental and behavioral health disorders and issues and benefit from early intervention services. Today, we will be hearing from experts at Marin County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, as well as many community service providers. We thank all of them for all they do for children and families here in Marin. We also must acknowledge that the need for mental health and behavioral health services is great. And there are not nearly enough programs, services, or funding in the nation, the state, or here in Marin County to meet the need. We hope that today deepens understanding of what is available, what we need to do to work together to close the gaps in services. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that September is also known as Suicide Prevention Month. We will be touching on this topic towards the end of our program, so please make sure to bring that awareness to yourself. This is quite a triggering topic, and so just note if you need to leave, if you need to take a break, if you need to move, if you need to hug the person next to you. Allow that to just be okay in this space. So let's learn more together and talk about it. Let's get uncomfortable a bit, and let's all make a commitment that we can do better for our children. This is our collective responsibility. Thank you. Who's next? Could I bring up Sandra Ramirez-Griggs?
Actually, I think we start with Gabby.
Oh, we'll start with Gabby. Oh, there. Is Gabby here? Yay, Gabby, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gabby Agar, and it is a pleasure for me to be here with you all today. In 2017, on my third day of orientation at Dominican University of California, I was sexually assaulted by a former student. In that moment, my whole world stopped. I had become a statistic. I knew I had every reason to leave college. Even my parents wanted me to leave so I could have a new start. A new beginning in my life felt like a nightmare, but I chose to stay because out of everything that was taken away from me, I wasn't going to let it take away my right to an education. Most importantly, I stayed because I had hope. Hope has the power to heal wounds, to mend relationships, and to bring people together. It is the light that guides us through the darkest times, and the force that inspires us to reach our dreams. The struggle for peace may be difficult, but with hope in our hearts, we can achieve it. We must believe that change is possible, and that love and kindness can conquer hate and division. As we open our minds and hearts to one another, we can create a world where hope reigns supreme, and peace is finally within reach. I held on to hope in honor of all the women who had to leave their dreams behind because they did not receive the same justice or resources as I did and were silenced. The hope that I will rise above this and become the woman who stands before you today as confident, brilliant, and resilient. It is because of the resources and people here in Marin who saw potential in me when I couldn't. From my college professors, mentors, and Marin resources, I came to understand in a way we are like pebbles being dropped into a pond, creating a ripple effect until it becomes a big wave. A wave of acts of kindness and love, promoting peace and hope until it touches every person on this planet. The undeniable belief that we each hold a key to our future, one that is worth living. That said, I would like to share a poem I wrote recently about my mental health struggles during my journey into young adulthood. Heartbroken, sad, and alone. Nowhere seems to be my home. Flushed cheeks, choking on tears. My voice is raspy from telling people my fears. One moment, a few seconds, my slumber was interrupted by a touch that felt endless. Heartbroken, sad, and alone. I no longer feel free to roam. Trapped by my own body, sensitive to the touch. My emotions always getting in one last punch. Heartbroken, sad, and alone. A sisterhood was lost. Now we all must step into the unknown. Each second, hour, and day makes my head pound and heart flutter. This is an anxiety that feels like no other. I hope that when they think of me, they suffer. Heartbroken, sad, and alone. I no longer feel the need to watch my tone. My world is on fire, but I pray to God to help make my healing transpire. I never knew my sensitive heart would betray me. I tried to delete every memory. Heartbroken, sad, and alone. I hope one day to feel as if I have grown, to flourish and love in a way that hurt was never known, so that I can stand up on my own. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Bear with me, technology is not my strong suit. I'm going to put my watch up here because I see that it's already 9:20 and we're going to run out of time so quickly. This morning is going to go by so fast. Gabby, thank you so much for sharing. It's always so emotional and so strength-based when people share, so thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. I see a lot of faces that I haven't seen in a long time. I also see a lot of new faces, which tells me that I've been here and around for a long time. So I'm so happy everybody is here today and to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is children. I love children, and I have to acknowledge and thank the four women that influenced my love for children. My abuelita, my mom, and some mentors. Some of you may have met, I hope you had the privilege of meeting Ethel Siderman. She was one of my first mentors. And Margie and Sue at the College of Marin Children's Centers. This is back in the early 90s. So some of you may not have known them, but I did, and they are still in my heart. So similar to many of you, I am a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, friend, teacher, therapist, and I have a deep love for children. I am also the supervisor over the county's early childhood and school-based programs with Youth and Family Services. I'd like to set the stage for our discussion today with a question versus an answer. What is early childhood mental health? I Googled it, and I hit a few links, and feel free to read this, but there's not a simple definition I found, nor did I find any of the definitions mention early childhood. It was childhood, which was interesting to me. So, I've personally heard different things when we ask this question. Things like, little children don't have to worry about mental health. Mental health is only a thing for adults. Babies don't know the difference. Little kids just need to play. We don't have to explain anything because, we're not going to talk about that stuff. That stuff is what will turn a child's world upside down and sideways if we don't talk about it. Please shout out a few of your own answers. What do you all think early childhood mental health is all about? Trauma. Yep. Attachment. Yep. Connection. Yes. Resources. Yes. Love. Yes. Stability. All of it. All of it is true. Early childhood is a time for building blocks. What is the world like? Is it safe? Is it warm and fuzzy? Cold and lonely? Satisfying? Happy? Funny? Scary? Angry? It's when resiliency is shaped. The sense of self, the sense of belonging, trust versus mistrust, safety, a connection to something, everything that you all just said. The list can go on. It's the foundation to our lifespan and trajectory. Recognizing how important early care is recognizing how important caregivers are. And that includes everyone that has anything to do with the child in any given moment. I believe we are all caregivers of our children. Not just here in Marin, everywhere we go, everywhere we live. Recognizing that the chronological age and what developmental age is in front of you when you are living and working with a child. Because we all know, just because I'm 5 years old doesn't mean that whatever has happened in my life has allowed me to thrive and become that 5-year-old. I might still be 3 emotionally or in other developmental ways. Anyone relating to children in any type of way always will have an influence on them. And I know I'm not sharing anything you don't already know. But I want to highlight the following. Parents, caregivers, teachers, the number one thing, everyone, is self-care. We've all heard, put your oxygen mask on first. Without it, we will go down, and so will our children. What are we seeing in early childhood? And when I say that, I'm saying, what are we seeing at the county in terms of our referrals, the children that we serve, the families? So when we get these little ones, we see a lot of sadness, melancholy, anger, lashing out, isolation, solitude, lack of socialization. We see speech and communication issues. We see uncertainty and other developmental issues. It starts with these things that most of us will think, okay, well, that's pretty normal, right? We all feel those things. If left unattended and unnoticed, that is when it could lead to depression, anxiety, social isolation, acting out in a way that is not within normal limits, and emotional dysregulation. And again, that list goes on as well. We have established terms that we use to describe what has happened to a child. Dawn mentioned one of them, trauma. We have ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, toxic stress, abnormal events, and it goes on. But I think a lot of us might still be waiting for the list, the cheat sheet, the list of what to do. What can we do as parents, as teachers, as caregivers when there is a child in distress, when they are showing us that they need something? And I think a lot of the times, and we see it at the county with the families that we work with, Señora, please tell me what to do. Just tell me, and I'll do it. And I want my child to be all right. What's the definition of all right? It must be individualized. Therefore, unfortunately, there is no list. We don't have a cheat sheet. And I love cheat sheets, believe me, I would make one up. But we don't have a cheat sheet. But here's the good news. We know the following to be true. Let me see what slide I'm on. I can't see. Oh. Wrong one. Back it up. Okay. So we pay attention, we observe, we listen, we reflect, we validate, we comfort, we support, we care deeply, we demonstrate and highlight worth, we promote a sense of self, we forgive, we accept, and we express and we model all feelings. We promote and establish community, friendships. We highlight protective factors. We highlight strengths. We address and provide interventions when a concern arises. And we identify options and choices. We teach and we share from our life wisdom. We show tolerance, excuse me, and kindness. We promote love. The list goes on. And there's a little one that just walked in the room and lit up the room. Because you all care, I trust you can all create your own cheat sheet for the children that are in your life. Thank you for caring. I'd like to introduce my colleague Sherilyn Mena, who is also here from Youth and Family Services.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me. I'm gonna try and move so I can be able to see my slides. So as Sandra said, my name is Sherilyn Mena. I'm a bilingual mental health practitioner with Youth and Family Services. I'm one of the clinicians that also specializes on 0 to 5 through child-parent psychotherapy. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mental health in schools, as I was trained as a school counselor, and it looks a little weird. Yeah, and I've been in the school system I've been working in school since I was 15 myself, so a little bit over 20 years now. We're gonna start with a little mindfulness activity. So I want you to get comfortable. If you have things in your hand, kind of just settle down. I want to bring you back to a time and place where you were 0 to 5. Or 6 years old, because some of us didn't necessarily go to pre-K, or maybe we were born later in the year and started school at 6. And I want you to think about waking up in the morning, getting ready for school. What were the conversations that you had, or your family had, or your caregivers had about what school was, what you can expect? Who were the people that were influencing you? What were they telling you about the first day? Now you're heading out the door. You are going on your way to school. And who are the faces that you're interacting with? Who all is there to welcome you to this new place? Is it a friendly environment? Do you see a setting that maybe has gates at the door? Or are there a lot of pictures? When you go into the classroom, how do your parents or your family members or your caregivers say goodbye to you? What do you expect? What is the role that your teacher now has in taking care of you? Is this the first time? So these are all questions that, sorry about the technological issues. These are all questions around that we're gonna cover today around what is the role of all the adults and all the people that we interface, including our environment, before and on the way that children go to school. I don't think I can click. Okay. So what are some current, is everyone able to see this? Yes. Okay.
This is what happens when you have a room full of therapists that are not good at technology. Where's Thomas? Anyone know how to change this out of presentation? Yeah. Boom. I knew there was an expert somewhere. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I'll hold on so we could see it. Take some time to look at the data. I know that everyone received the first 5 in front of your table. There's some updated data around what is the current state of mental health with children. Now I've lost my slide, so I'll wait. Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, yeah, I got the clicker. So in 2019, more than 1/3 of high school students reported persistently feeling sad or hopeless in the past year. And this is all from the CDC. Nearly 1 in 5 kids consider dying by suicide. 7 out of 100,000 kids between ages 10 to 18 years old actually. Kara, can you remind me what the new term would be instead of completed suicide? Died by suicide. In between 2018 and 2019. And for anxiety disorders characterized by excessive fears and worries, they started at early ages. The report found 2% of children ages 3 to 5 had anxiety. That percentage increased 13.7% for ages 12 to 17. What we know is that early childhood informs a lot of our internal working model and how we end up regulating. And sometimes that starts as early as pregnancy, so while they're in utero and after they're born. And this is all data that I gathered pre-pandemic. And so then what we know is that the pandemic itself exacerbated things for a lot of children. And I was out there doing disaster work, and so I got to see a lot of the parents that were struggling themselves. And I still was doing my therapy session, so I ended up talking to many of the kids. Ooh, it's not working. Okay. Working with many of the kids and knowing that they were stressed out because they're aware of everything that was happening in their surroundings. There's a lot of uncertainty. And uncertainty is not a thing that a lot of us as adults are able to cope with, and children much less. So here you have the model, the Bronifer model, ecological model, and it kind of captures the fact that children aren't raised in silos or in vacuums, that really they are surrounded and aware of their communities, sometimes even policies. I've worked with kids that are 6 years old who have a lot of shame during the Trump administration for speaking Spanish. And so they're forcing themselves to leave their native language, to adapt, to be accepted, because what we know is that kids want to be accepted and they need to be accepted in order to thrive, because their livelihood depends on the adults in their lives. Or let's stay here. Can anyone raise your hands if you fall in the microsystem of a child's life. So are you a parent, a mentor, a peer, a teacher, maybe a social media influencer, a health provider, a parent? Yeah. So a lot of us interact with a lot of kids in our lives and are responsible for a lot of what they know about themselves. So children really early on end up knowing the world through their parents, through their caregivers. They know what they're good at. Developmentally, they start developing their internal working model about if the world is safe, and I think Sandra captured a lot of that, and that continues throughout. So many times in a silo, which is the therapy room, you work with a client who has low self-esteem, and you might help them develop affirmations or coping mechanisms or reduce negative thoughts, but then they go back into the classroom and their teacher yells at them. And so then that reinforces this idea that had already been instilled in them that they weren't good enough, that they're not worth of maybe respecting. And I understand that this doesn't work just in an individual basis, but this also works with teachers having their own ecosystem that they're also working with, right? The larger system, the policies that they're facing, having lack of funding. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about what are the adult roles in the children's mental health. So ultimately, every person that a child ends up interacting with has a role to play in a child's life. We will talk about protective factors and the social wellness. Matt will present on that afterwards. And so what is the role that we all play? So I've kind of divided it according to the roles that are in the school system. Teachers, a lot of the times, have a lot of priorities around like instruction and have a lot of limitations once they are in the classroom to be able to do social emotional learning. And some of that has to do with the larger system and being able to allocate resources and time in particular to have that relationship building, because what we know is that it is through the relationship that we heal, and that's what many of us do as service providers, right? 40% of what we do isn't necessarily skill-based as a therapist, but it's really about the relationship, and we are co-healing because it's a parallel process. And so a lot of the times, especially when they're young, one of the things that teachers can do to kind of focus and bring some social emotional element into the classroom is being able to model, use the time that they have in the classroom to focus on relationship building. I was on a research team, and there was a teacher that I interviewed in El Cerrito High School who ended up telling me that she spends the first 2 weeks really honing in on relationship building. And that it doesn't mean that she's gonna disrupt any behaviors that might occur throughout the year, but then it meant that she can hold students accountable and hold that high bar of expectations, because she had a relationship. She knew what they liked, their hobbies, what their families were like. Because when kids come to the classroom and come to the school, there's a lot of things that happen to them. There's the stressors about what's happening at home with parents. There's the stressors about financial stuff. There's policy stuff that impacts them that they don't necessarily understand but might have some awareness about. Teachers can also support and promote neurodiversity. Not everyone learns the same. So I teach at the master's level other therapists, and I have students who are between the ages of 20 to 50, who this is their second career, and I make sure that in every class I have multiple ways of instruction. So that's physical, whether that's including reflective time, one-on-one time, collaboration time, where they have breakout time, because not everyone learns the same. So if you do have a kid that's a little more active, instead of continuously trying to hone in on that energy, how can that energy become a strength for that child? One thing I know about a lot of folks who are diagnosed with ADHD is that they are really social, and sometimes that means that they have a lot of skill around bringing people in and welcoming them into the classroom, and so what role can they play so that you are enhancing that strength and not thinking about it in a deficit mindset. But that is something that, again, it doesn't work in a silo, and it has to start in the classroom, and then that education has to go into the parents. Parents could and should be included in children's educational journeys. So I've worked both in elementary school and in middle school, and some of the differences are that for whatever reason, when parents transfer into middle school, they're not as included as they used to be. So I went to school, and every single year, regardless of my grades, my mom had to come in and have a parent-teacher conference. I've worked in schools in this county where not unless you're failing, you don't have a parent-teacher conference. And so there isn't that relationship. And I know that doesn't hold just on the parents or the teachers, but we work in a majority bilingual area, right? And so sometimes there's the language capacity. There's also the time, and I think I'll cover that when it comes to administration. There's the time limitations. So the same way that I sometimes have to stay in the office later so that I can make that connection, it's not all the time, but it is a sacrifice so that I can build that connection one-on-one, because what I know is that if I need something to continue in the household, then the parents are instructional in that. And usually the family is more effective at getting some of the changes done than I individually as a therapist or service provider am. And so for the teachers it's the same. And so the parents having a person on campus that they can call when they have questions around the individual education plan of a child, or about what are the schedule changes this week, or why was my child marked absent, they need to have a trusted adult on campus that they're able to connect with, just like children should. Some of the roles around administration and instructional coaches, I think there's both the support around adjusting curriculum, support and promote teachers allocating time to build with families and students. So an example of that, I worked at a school in OUSD, and whenever they had team meetings, they had a culture of the teachers calling parents a couple times a year, but not just to report the negative stuff. It was also to report the positive. So they would start off the meeting, if that hadn't already happened throughout the week, by allocating 20 minutes just to call parents and say, hey, your kid did really well this week. They said something really insightful. They were able to create that change, because parents don't always want to hear, oh, like they disrupted class and they're disrespectful. So balancing out the consistent negative calls with some positive affirmation also works as well. And it builds a relationship, and it tells the child that you care, as well as the family. Counselors. So usually at the elementary school level, there is not many counselors. I think now with the mental health crisis that we are currently in, they're allocating more funds in order to allocate counselors into the into elementary schools, but usually we see them at the middle school and high school level. And when it comes to that role, I think in a lot of different districts, we have many districts within Marin County, but a lot of different districts, a lot of different schools have their own culture around what is the role of the school counselor. And so building some clarity so that the school counselor, I'm short on time, sorry. Building some clarity so that the school counselor is aware of what the role is, and if they're only gonna be doing crisis intervention, or they have the capacity to do social emotional learning. And then lastly, so a lot of us might be CBOs or community-based organizations. And so one of the roles is, how do you welcome CBOs into your classroom? Because a lot of the times it's not just for the teacher to hold the emotional well-being of the student. So can there be a youth mentor in the classroom? Can there be someone from the after-school program that is supporting students and connecting so that they can go and check in if something is triggering? And parent-teacher nights. So this is a quote, and I'll read it quickly. It's weird, in all of human history, communities have helped raise the children. Why do we ask so few adults to take so much responsibility for raising our children? So I leave you with, what small shift can you make to connect to one child in your life? Thank you. I present to you our program manager for the Children's System of Care in Marin County, Matt Carter.
This might have worked the very first time. Fancy that. So we all know that wellness has a lot to do with how we navigate stress. So the three of us are trying to show you in vivo how we can navigate stress and Produce wellness, okay. Caffeine's part of that. Okay. All right, I'm going to broaden this conversation one step further. I like the ecological model Sherilyn was introducing to us and talking about these concentric circles. So we're going to talk about social wellness, which, two very big words, so I'm going to define it for us because I only have 14 and a half minutes. See, they know I'm a loud talker usually, so I have to like modulate. I don't be too loud. Okay, so I'm going to first invite you all, before I define the parameters here, I want to invite you all to, so what did Maria said, get uncomfortable. So, okay, so give me a second here. All right, so I brought, sometimes I feel like Santa Claus. Favorite color? Favorite color? Aha. It's because of the shirt, right? We didn't pre-plan that either. That's perfect. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with that in a second. All right. This table, do we have a favorite color? What are the odds of this happening again? I don't know. Yellow. Curveball. How about another one? Blue. Aha. Got you covered. Okay. All right, we're talking about being social. All right, so I have a challenge for you all, if you're so inclined. All right, Kara, you are on the timer. This is the challenge that I have for this group. So we have two balloons. There are 10 tables on the left and 10 tables on my right. The challenge is we're going to set a timer. 1 minute, okay? And I'd like for this balloon to make its way to every table on my right side. Cameraman, what's your name back there? Scott. We want to appreciate Scott and deliver him 2 balloons. So we're going to do that, and so this table is going to knock that balloon, and it must touch somebody at each table, 1 person at each table, 10 tables, and find its way back to Scott. And this blue balloon has got to find its way to Scott. 10 tables must touch somebody along the way. So engage with this to your level of comfort. Kara's got a timer. 1 minute. 1 minute. I already see strategy. Somebody's strategizing already. They're trying to move. The balloon experts, hold on. We got a grand balloon champion in this room. All right. All right. So there's always somebody who wants to alter the parameters. No, you got to stay seated. And I know one of you's thinking, like, he didn't say it has to be hit. I'm going to walk it around. So who's got the clicker? You got the click-clack? Oh, it's up here. All right. So are we ready? Are we ready? All right. I'm going to say, okay, on your mark. Get set. Go. All right, looks like the purple team's in the lead. The blue balloon is, it hit the ground already. Oh, we got we see the purple team seems to be, Scott's getting excited. We got a few tables that are not participating. Close. We're almost there. It's so close. Jump for it, Scott. Jump for it. Jump for it. All right. Social wellness, okay. Relationships, how we interact. I want to ask the group, what was your experience, or what is your experience before this 1 minute exercise? What is your experience in this moment? How did it change you in 1 minute? Volunteers, please.
One of the things that came up is just, it takes a village. It takes a village to do what we're doing, to get the balloon over here, to support children.
Boom. More, give me more. In 1 minute of balloon play, we feel more connected.
We had to start before we knew how it was actually going to work.
Uncertainty, ambiguity, weird guy with the mic. Laughing, having a good time.
I just feel like one individual made a connection with me and was depending on me.
Yeah, you don't often get that right, Benita. Yeah. Communicating, great. Verbally and non-verbally, because I saw that. There was air traffic control going on over here.
Be available to help.
Yes, being available to help. Yes.
Felt like it was an icebreaker. Like the feeling is that everybody's more involved now.
Yeah, that's great. My 17-year-old told me yesterday, Dad, I hate icebreakers. This better be good. We're going to come back to that. Alert. Internal arousal level. Like, can you feel it? More energized? You can feel it, yeah?
I heard let the children play. Weird starting to play.
Yes. And that has double meanings. Let the children play. Internal. We actually have a balloon for her too. But I got to ask Mom first, Movement, yes. A lot of movement going on. Okay. Excitement. Okay, good word. And so just a few more to wrap it up, because that was all positive. Anyone want to self-report?
I personally felt frustration, like I just wanted to go to just like each table and like go.
Yes. Okay, so who would want to self-report?
How are we doing comparative to others?
Competition. Well, man, we could go for days.
Matt, it's always so good to see you.
Same.
But for 5 tables, I did follow the balloon, and I was like, no, let go, Mo, let it go. Trust the system. But there was a moment where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna follow this balloon and cheerlead the balloon to every table. But I was like, no, that's not the parameter.
Yeah.
Or at least I stopped myself. And that piece about imagination and play, there was some time as we were growing up to be adults where we stopped imagination and innovation and creativity. And I stopped myself from following that balloon because I felt that was not part of the rules.
And lastly, does anyone want to report, like, so that some people, when they do something like this, will have a feeling of anxiety because this is the nature of competition, competing?
I had fear of the sound of a pop balloon.
I didn't give a trigger warning. You're right. Who knows? Who knows what that energy produces in people? This is why it's so challenging for teachers. You design certain activities, but who knows how that activity lands for certain people? Because the meaning might be different.
Freaked out when they hit the floor. I was ready to die.
We have that on video too. That would have been great. Let's do a couple more.
I felt frustrated when I realized that every table had a time we were over here, like it went this way, and I was like, wait a minute, why? Like you want to control it, be like, no, you gotta go that way first.
Yeah, so frustrated with other people on your team of how it's not working out. Yes, these are important feelings for us to navigate and develop relationships with. Yes, one more.
the worry of inclusion, like he was saying, trying to include this table, they were the last people to get it, even though the balloon was here already. So having to go backwards to include them.
Right, so on the spectrum of inclusion, I'm worried about everyone, and I want to win this thing. We all fall somewhere on that spectrum, and maybe we like intentionally move ourselves along that spectrum, but either way, either side, we have to deal with that feeling, right? If we want everybody in the room to participate, and we also have our own wants and needs, right? 1 minute of a balloon game, okay? So for those of you who don't know, I'm a therapist by trade, for better or for worse. And so in my little 1 hour a week, I specialize in children and families. So my little 1 hour a week in my silo, these are some of the experiences that I try to produce in my clients, right? And we want them to be seen and heard. We want them to feel interpersonal connection, develops trust. And through that, hopefully we're communicating. We can help kids find words for their experience to communicate, this is how I feel about this. This is what I'm needing. And obviously these muscles take time to build. Getting the perspective of others, because other people have feelings and needs too. Oh my God, for real? Can't just follow my own? And through that, we learn how to manage relational stress. It can't always be about me, but it can't always not be about me. We have to learn those things. We develop these muscles over time, and hopefully along the way experience warmth and joy of connecting with another human being. So 1 hour a week, I have the luxury of getting paid to do this. But how does this, look what we just did in 1 minute of a balloon game. 1 minute of knocking around a balloon. How much of this were we able to accomplish? How much? Did we hit this stuff? Did we get it? And then some? All right, so what if this group was able to play that balloon game every single day, something similar game every day, maybe throughout the day? What would happen? What would happen inside us? What would happen between us? What would happen? Every day we got to play this game.
Better strategy.
Better strategy. The pragmatist in the room.
Joy.
Joy.
We get to know each other.
Get to know each other. And have to be confronted with everybody in the room has their strings and their growth edges, and that'll all come crashing up against each other. And then we'll say, put Johnny in the corner because he just waxed that balloon too hard. You know, whatever. What else? What else would happen between us and inside of us? If we could play this every day, once a day, or all throughout the day, what else happens?
Connection and understanding.
Connection and understanding. Even if your teammate blows it and you don't win the balloon game?
Our strengths and weaknesses.
Because it all comes out, right? So we all know, like in the therapy room, we're oftentimes beholden to what people present, right? What they tell you. So-and-so does this. My mom does this. My teacher does this. How do you know? But when we start playing, trust me, it all comes out. Say again? Cliques would form of like the cool balloon players and the non-cool balloon players. Don't talk to her because she's no good at that game. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then hopefully there's enough safety that we could step outside of that and our colleagues, our friends would help us. And like Mo was saying, so that there'd be enough trust and support where that little sensor or that little person on your shoulder saying, you can't do that, don't do that, which does that all the time for all sorts of things, that there's just a little bit of an ease, like, no, maybe you can, if you can do it in an appropriate way. All right. So, time check. See, they know me. They got on he's going on a tangent again. I can't see.
4 more minutes.
All right. So, yeah. So there was a time, okay, there was a time that we could get a lot of this, and this still is a time. All across the world, there are social structures that allow for this in our culture, that allow for structured, repetitive, safe play where kids can have these experiences all throughout the day or for a few hours every single day or on the weekends, right? I'm just going to list a few of them up here. So obviously sports and clubs and art and dance, throw out a few more. This is just, a small little tidbit of structured, organized play. And play can be defined however you want to define it. Art is playful. Dance, obviously. So many things can be playful. Good teachers weave play into everything, a lot of what they do. Okay? Some of what we know, we felt it here, didn't we? Organized play, communal play, activates your stress response system. And by activating it in a safe way, over time, builds those capacities. We develop a relationship to stress. And then we know we can look to the person next to us to help us when we feel the internal arousal level. My chest is feeling tight. And I look around and I see friendly faces. Oh, I'm safe, okay. Okay? Imagine if you get that every day throughout the day, instead of a face looking back at you like, what's wrong with you? So we know this. We know this about shared play, that this helps wire the brain, wire these capacities into the brain. This includes music, orchestra, swimming, dance. We're not just talking about sports here. What else do we know? We know that youth who play team sports report less stress and better mental health outcomes. We know that the odds of suffering from depression and anxiety decreases as team participation increases. So the more participation in something larger than themselves, of having to navigate, it's not always about me, or I have to consider the perspective and feelings of others. We know this. Okay? 22 study, 11,000 kids, okay? Compared to kids who didn't play sports, involvement in team sports, all these positive outcomes, lowered the scores in depression, anxiety scales, etc. So some of you might be thinking, well, it makes sense, exercise, great. Discipline, right? Our culture loves that word, right? Discipline, okay? Very, very interesting statistic here. The same 11,000 kids looked at kids who participated only in individual sports. Those kids had higher mental health struggles than kids that played zero sports. This study of 11,000 kids demonstrates, amongst many things, I don't want to be reductive here, but amongst many things, it appears the therapeutic factor is being part of something bigger. Shared goals. I don't always get to win, for real. I have to consider your feelings too. We got to work together, looking at each other's faces, sharing joy. We just did it in a 1-minute balloon game. 1 minute. All right. A few more slides. So we know the last 10, 15 years, the shape of play is changing. A lot of kids still play. But a lot of them play in their room, in front of a screen, online. It is what it is. This is not a get off my lawn speech. It is what it is. But to notice that collective play has changed quite a bit. Not just because of this. You see this graph, and the big lines on the right are video game play. Going up, 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 up. And we know what the pandemic and being largely inside did. These shot up. For adults too. We stare at our phones too. Some of you are doing it right now. All right, and we also know, especially in the Bay Area, that if you want your kids to participate in these activities, they're out there, they're all over the place, but they are so costly. My youngest is on a dance team. Man, like we're going broke. I mean, dance team, and all these teams, they want to travel all over the place. And it's like, the amount of competition and pressure and You could be Steph Curry. No, you can't. Come on now. So, but there's been a commodification. There's been all of these costs associated with just play. And so the rise of the travel team and the cost it is to like, oh, I want to take art classes. Okay, do you know how much it costs to just do a drop-in art or ceramics class for kids? So, and lastly, and the kids that we serve, that we work with, can they afford those resources? So if they can't afford those resources, they don't have access to all of this. And what do we do in 1 minute of a balloon game that a lot of our kids cannot even access that feeling, those experiences, right? Because they don't have access to all the travel teams and the expensive art studios, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right, I'm going to end with a very bad dad joke, because I said to my 17-year-old, like, she's like, I don't get it, Dad. Like, the slide's about bringing play back. Like, don't you get the joke? Tell me somebody in here gets the joke. Who gets the joke? What's the joke? What's the joke? Who's this? Yeah, she's like, Dad, I don't think they're going to know who that is. He has like his hair, like no, that's the old Justin Timberlake. Nah. Okay. All right. Dad, you're so out of touch. Okay. So I'm just going to leave with a question for you all is, in every one of our roles, I don't care, I don't care what our role is. There's a way, and so Mo is speaking to our internal censor that tells us we shouldn't be doing that. Even for us adults. And I used to joke, like, as a therapist, sometimes I would introduce play to the kids, knowing full well it was for me. Hey, we're going to finger paint today. I don't want to finger paint. Oh, we're going to finger paint. It's a finger paint day. So, how can we bring play to our lives? Self-care. For parents, do our parents get to play? When the parents bring the kids in and say, Johnny won't stop jumping off my couch and he's throwing things around the house, and we ask, Mom, do you ever get a chance to play? It's like, what? I don't understand. What? So how can we bring play to our lives and more play to the lives of our kids? Because in 1 minute of a balloon game, look what it did for us. And do they get that same opportunity? That's it. All right. You gonna?
I have no. Before, but let me just have it. I was remiss. I forgot to mention that on each table there is some type of book, and we want to thank First Five Marin for purchasing these books. And the way that it's going to work is one of you at each table will be a lucky one that gets to take it home. We hope that whoever that is somebody that will utilize it with children, because there's 3 different ones, and they all touch on our emotions, feelings, and how to navigate all that. So,
and Sandra, we wanted to mention this was a free handout, the navy blue one. The others are the gifts.
Yes, yes. So at the end, Michelle will let you know, right?
There's a star on the back of someone's agenda at each table.
All right, now you're good. Before they get too rough.
Yeah.
The power of gifts.
All right, raise your hand
stuff.
if you just won something. Nice. All right. So everyone, so one of the challenges as you work with kids is how to shift their energy when their energy needs to go someplace else. So throw out some of the best ways we do this. Distractions, bribery. Okay, so this morning we talked a lot about like some of our concerns around child and teen mental health. So we're going to continue that conversation. We're going to call up Kara Connors, who's the county's coordinator of all the suicide prevention services and programming. So we're sort of moving towards, well, what happens when things are not going well, a kid doesn't have support, is not seen, has to live with internal struggles that no one can see or they don't feel safe enough to mention. Or no one's even asking because it's too taboo for me to ask. Okay? Are you good? I'm good. And then we leave it alone. So Kara's going to talk a lot about how do we raise the most difficult questions at the most difficult times. That's the transition. So I'm noting we're taking a bit of a jump here, and we're going to transition our nervous systems to a more serious conversation. So note that, take care of yourselves, and we sort of like give it the gravitas, the feeling that it merits. Okay? So Kara Connor is going to come up and talk to you.
Really hard to follow the balloon game. My name is Kara Connors. I'm the Senior Program Coordinator for Suicide Prevention at the county. And thank you, Michelle, so much for creating this space for all of us to come together and create an opportunity to have a collective conversation around suicide prevention. I am going to work off my slides today. So many of you here in the room have participated in the Marin County Suicide Prevention Collaborative meetings, and many times before our meetings, we always start off with some caring reminders. And thank you, Maria, for also kind of setting the stage for this conversation. So the first is mental health and suicidality are often emotional and painful topics to discuss. And many of us here in the room might be loss survivors, who miss our loved ones, our clients, our family members, our neighbors, our classmates. Some in the room might be thinking or have attempted suicide. And if you're thinking about suicide, please reach out. You shouldn't hold yourself responsible for something that you didn't do or say in the past based on what you learned today. And today, each of us are holding many different feelings. So let's acknowledge one another and ourselves on this path of resiliency, connection, and care and hope. And then I do want to just highlight the 988 number and the crisis text line where you can text Marin to 741-741. So I like to begin this morning with just a little bit of a reflection, a question to each of you to then share out to the group. What is a strength of yours that you bring to keeping a child safe? And we can just share openly. What is something that you bring to keeping a child safe? Compassion. Humor. Go ahead. Connection. What was that? Honesty. Consistency. Trust. Appreciation. So all of these skills that you bring set you up to be a first responder, to have these conversations when you didn't think you could. So what I hope we can do today is to give you at least start the conversation, give some of you these skills so that you can walk away with some confidence that if you encounter somebody who might be struggling, that you can support them. So as I mentioned, I help coordinate the Marin County Suicide Prevention Collaborative. I see many of you who have attended our meetings or who are co-leads on our action teams. But we are a multi-sectoral group of public and private individuals and agencies who comprise of loss survivors and allies. We meet monthly. Our next meeting is October 4th, and that's actually going to be a training. We build community and awareness and advance our strategic plan. We have co-chairs and community action teams and leaders, and we work with many key partners, including the Gun Safety Collaborative, Marin County Office of Education, OD Free Marin, Aging Action Initiative, and more. And there's our website for you to take a look at and visit. And as I mentioned, I do have a table outside, so please check in and sign and give me your email address. We'll follow up with you. These are just some of our 7 core strategies that are reflected in our strategic plan that you can visit on our website. So we all bring our own values, beliefs, that help inform the language that we use when we talk about suicide. And we can reduce stigma and foster hope by using best communication practices. It used to be that we would use terms like committed suicide, successful attempt, or completed attempt. And maybe some of you are continuing to use that language today. Instead, we're asking that you use the terms someone who has died by suicide, taken their life, a person living with suicidal thoughts or behavior. And it's important to note that there is no success or lack of success when dealing with suicide. Can someone share a little bit about why we might not use the word committed suicide? Any thoughts about that? What are some things that we commit? Crime. What else? Adultery. Okay. So those are terms that might make somebody feel really badly about having a feeling. And we know that suicide is a complex health issue and that there is not one reason why someone might think about suicide. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so let's set a little context here in Marin County. In Marin, this is just data from the last 5 years. And this is a slide that basically shows what we see, what we know, and what we don't see. So the first is, over the last 5 years, there have been 224 residents in Marin County who have died by suicide. And we know in our community that suicide happens across the lifespan, race, ethnicity, and gender. But we do know that men and boys are disproportionately impacted by suicide in our community. Men and boys make up almost 50% of residents in our community, but are impacted by suicide by over 70%. In response to that, just to make note, we do have a men and boys action team. We have some of our members of that team in this room, including Dave Cord and Steve Diamond, and also Don Carney. So please reach out to them so they can share what their experience is like being on our team. So what is it that we don't see? We don't see the number of people that are affected. It is estimated that with each suicide loss, up to 150 people are impacted. And in addition, there's a company that I've received my training from called LivingWorks, and they estimate that 5 to 10% of a given population could be impacted by suicidal thoughts and behaviors. So in our community, that could mean that up to 13,000 people might be experiencing suicidal thoughts and behavior. It doesn't mean that they're going to take their life, but they might possibly be experiencing that. And here's some hope. 90% of the time that first responders at the Golden Gate Bridge were able to successfully negotiate with somebody at the bridge, it was a successful intervention. So the power of connection really matters in these situations. So here's some facts about suicide. The more we understand about suicide prevention, the more we can help those who are struggling in our lives. The first is talking about suicide will not give someone the idea to take their life. In fact, by not talking about suicide, we can keep somebody at risk. So our job is to increase hope and decrease the anxiety a person might be feeling. People in distress are ambivalent, and we hear that from people who have attempted suicide. They will express, I didn't want to die, but I really wanted the pain to end. I didn't want to wake up. But most people, when given appropriate resources, choose to live. People who attempt suicide are not doing it for sympathy or to seek attention. Maybe they have tried already, and maybe it was missed or dismissed or maybe avoided. Suicide is a leading cause of death among people who misuse alcohol and drugs, and substances are typically involved in a suicide. So today we're talking about children. It used to be that people would say children under 12 don't experience suicidality. While it is rare, it does happen. So children can and do have suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Children of all ages can experience suicidal ideation. So it's less about the age, it's more about how do we prepare our children. And we can start having those conversations at young ages. Many of you might be working with children who have already started to share their distress or their questions. But remember, not all will have thoughts of suicide. It's important for us to all evaluate and ask these questions. What are children experiencing in their distress? How are they communicating their emotional pain? And how can we prepare them in case they feel hopeless and don't see a way forward? And if not for their child, maybe a friend of theirs. So just because they're young doesn't mean they're capable. I stepped into this work in large part for my professional interest as a public health professional, but I also stepped into this work for my own personal loss, including a young child at the age of 11. So we can begin to have conversations with young people about big, intense feelings so they can develop their emotional language. And asking about suicide can be done in a safe and effective way. And each of us, together and collectively, can play a really important role in helping to be a part of that safety net. So how do we prepare to discuss suicide with children? First, we want to build our own emotional vocabulary, and when having these kinds of conversations, have the ability to manage our own internal emotions. We want to be able to put feelings into terms that a child can understand. And we want to understand normal childhood changes versus those changes that require more attention. And that's probably one of the most fraught issues. I oftentimes hear, how do I know the difference between normal teen expression and experiences versus something that is more dire? How do I know? I think one reason, and I think Matt and all of our great colleagues here can fill in the gaps here, but one thing that I'd like to share with people is if you're noticing a departure in a person's behavior that isn't normal, that's really striking a chord and saying something seems a little off, then I would use that as a door opener for a conversation. And remember, it's always important to know your pathway to support. I mean, look at everybody here in this room, from educators and schools, providers, and always know your emergency options, because if you can't access your providers, you always have your emergency options, such as 988, which in our county is facilitated by Bucklew Programs, and Steve Diamond will talk a little bit about that today. It's always important to validate when a child is expressing their distress, so expressing their courage. Please stay calm and focus on their needs. And tell them that help is available and that they can feel better with support and treatment. Remember, you don't have to have all the answers. Your job is really to be a bridge to hope and to help, and you're not likely to fix a problem in that moment. So there is hope, right? We've talked a little bit about some of the data that we experience here in Marin County, but the other part of the data narrative is findings that came out from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. A survey was conducted, and it indicated in that survey that the majority of people feel that suicide can be prevented. They're interested in learning how to play a role in helping, and people believe that people show signs before taking their life, but relatively few feel that they can identify those signs, but want to know those signs and have a conversation. So that's great, and that's true in our community. And then lastly, there's a much greater readiness to have conversations around mental health, and I think we can attribute that to many of our young people in our community who are really strong advocates for trying to support their peers and normalizing the conversation. It's really the rest of us that kind of have to catch up, I would say. So what are some of the warning signs or red flags that tell you to pay attention? Remember, some of these signs that might exist in a person's life doesn't mean that a person will definitely be thinking about suicide. Life problems can put somebody more at risk for suicide, or may just mean that they're struggling and need help. Again, what do you notice that is different? So what are some words that a person might express that indicates they might be struggling or thinking about suicide? What are some things? Yeah. They feel hopeless. What else? Desperate. What other words do you hear? No way out. Thank you. So this isn't a comprehensive list talking about wanting to die, seeking revenge, talking about hopelessness, maybe saying, my life sucks, why bother? Maybe they're talking about a plan, or maybe they're joking and making innuendos about suicide. Some actions might include searching online and trying to access a lethal mean. And that's really important. Nationally, in our country, 60% of suicides are by firearms. So if we can reduce access to lethal means, such as firearms and substances, then we can go a long way to reducing suicide in our communities. Other actions might be using more drugs. Maybe you know somebody who uses substances, but maybe they're increasing their use of substances. Or maybe in the case of an older adult, they're withholding their use of medication. Giving things away, skipping class, sleeping in class. And then some feelings that might be expressed include depression, anxiety, changes in mood, changes in sleep, coming to terms with gender or sexual identity, maybe being expressed through stomach aches and headaches. And these are things that allow us to pay attention, and we can use this in our conversations. There we go. So what are some shock absorbers? Each of you know what protective factors can really support mental health and well-being. But first and foremost, I want to highlight the very powerful role of social connectedness. And we promote that through our work in the Suicide Prevention Collaborative. But other shock absorbers might be spending time with family and friends, reaching out for help, talking to a teacher, getting more sleep, doing things for pleasure, a long list here. But having more of these feel-good things means less risky behavior and stronger mental health. So when we talk about risk factors broken up here by health, environment, and family, remember there's not one thing that causes suicide, but it is important to note one risk factor. And when talking about suicide and risk factors, again, I look at suicide as a health issue, much like we would look at perhaps heart disease and cardiovascular issues. What are the risk factors that a person might indicate to us that they're struggling? Maybe this person is sedentary. Maybe they abuse alcohol or drugs. Maybe they have high blood pressure. But even with all of those risk factors, it doesn't mean a person will have a heart attack. But it does tell us to pay attention. So when we think about different health, environment, and family issues, the same is true. So definitely take note of one or more of those issues. So what does it mean to be in distress? What happens to the mind when a person is struggling? If you were to reflect on a time in your life when you experienced some type of physical pain, maybe it was a concussion or a broken leg, and then somebody asked you for directions, chances are it would be really difficult to provide those directions, which kind of puts us in the mindset of somebody who's in distress. Problem-solving abilities get really limited, concentration is off, our focus is off, and so it's important for us to think about how a person is struggling, why it might be hard for them to navigate a way out. And that's why it's so important for each and every one of us to be that first responder and to be able to support that person who's struggling. So our stressors, we have an unlimited amount of stressors in our life. And we have a finite number of coping skills. And oftentimes when that's imbalanced and we have more stresses in our life, how can we rely on our limited coping skills? And that's when a sense of hopelessness and despair might emerge. And so that can impact a person's thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors that are affected. So what do we do? How do we have a conversation? Many of you are familiar with the public health approach to fires and earthquakes: stop, drop, and roll. I like to break this down by ask, listen, and refer. So when we talked earlier about different warning signs, let's go back to those warning signs and think about how we might use that as a door opener for a conversation with somebody who might be struggling. So starting the conversation may seem intimidating, but remember that often when someone is thinking about suicide, they are looking for an opportunity to talk about it. In fact, they're going to be looking at your face and seeing how you're going to respond. Remember, they might have been carrying a story around with them that they've wanted to talk about. So they're going to look to you for your readiness to receive the information that they're going to share with you. So the first is to ask. Maybe you've noticed someone in your life who's a little bit more withdrawn. You might approach them and say, "You have seemed really down or angry or withdrawn lately. Can we talk? Have you wished that you didn't wake up? Are you thinking about suicide?" Remember, earlier in our conversation today, we talked about some of the facts, and we know that asking directly about suicide will not give someone the idea to take their life. Or you might say, when you say that you give up on life or life sucks, what do you mean by that? Sometimes when people lose hope, they think about suicide. Is that true for you? Or are you thinking about taking your life? Sometimes when we talk to teens, you might have to approach it in a different way. In other words, starting broad and then getting specific. It might include something like, have you thought about going to sleep and not waking up? Are you losing hope? Do you feel in despair? Have you thought about suicide? It could be that if you ask about suicide right off the bat, they might give you the answer that they think you're looking for. So then we want to listen and validate. It really hurts when somebody breaks up with you. I'm so glad you told me. Now you're normalizing it and you're making it okay to have this conversation. And I can imagine how painful this must feel for you, or how tough this must be for you. Maybe there's a chance that you won't feel like this forever. And then what we want to do is refer. We talked earlier about a person's problem-solving abilities being really limited. So how do we tap into their ability to problem solve so we can help foster resiliency even in that moment? So I care about you. You can start to feel better with some help and support, and I'm going to stay with you while we get help. Is there someone you think of that we can call? And find out from them. Do they want to talk to a teacher? Do they want to call 988? Do they want to call a therapist? Do they want to talk to their coach? Or you might say, let's keep you safe. What do you need right now? Who would you like to speak with? Now you're creating a conversation. So I mentioned earlier, here are some implications for teens when having this conversation. Consider their developmental factors when determining safety. Children have concrete thinking until around 12. And so if you ask for questions that are too specific, teens will tend to answer only the question asked and may not generalize to other scenarios. So again, have you ever tried to kill yourself? They might answer no. And so that's why you just want to start broad and then hone in with more specificity. Children, especially teens, might deny because they know what not to say and they may not trust the adult. If you ever did feel that way, what would you do? And then from here, you can start to create a safety plan together. And some of the trainings that we provide at the Collaborative include safety planning. Anybody can do safety planning. If you call 988, ask for a safety plan. And the trained counselors at Bucklew will help create a safety plan for you or your loved one. So if they say no, encourage them to talk about how they are feeling, support their coping and resiliency, and ask what helps them feel better. Encourage them to reach out to resources such as the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and remind them that you are there for them. Listen without lecturing or judgment. Super hard when we're having these conversations. We want to you have to kind of resist the temptation to interrupt. Really, really hard. But be vigilant about the behaviors you are noticing and to continue to check in with them on a regular basis. So that's a kind of a very quick overview of how we talk about suicidality and information that we provide in some of our trainings. I want to pivot a little bit here to just show you a little bit about what's coming up. As I mentioned, September Suicide Prevention Month. We've got more activities tonight at 6 p.m. as a virtual event. We're going to be talking about 988. I highly encourage you to come and learn a little bit more about what the role of 988 is in our community. And then you can use the QR code to look at some of the other events. I will highlight one more, September 26th at Dominican University. We're going to talk about youth exploitation. And we have a special guest coming in from a woman who was a part of a cult and recovered from that. And we'll talk about what that looks like for her. So here are a list of resources. Feel free to take a picture of these resources. I want to highlight a couple of them, and some tables have these flyers. We partner with Bucklew Programs. They provide Allies for Hope, which is a loss survivor support group. And we partner with the Felton Institute. They do 3 different things. One is a post-vention response team. They have trained volunteers who are loss survivors who go to the homes immediately after a suicide to provide support for those families who are bereaved. And they just launched a youth loss support group and an attempt survivor support group. So please share this life-saving information with people in your network. And then lastly, I want to thank you for the courage it takes to have this conversation. I think it's really important for each of us. Children look to adults, and it makes children really nervous if they see the adults in their life not taking care of themselves. I remember when I was little and I would look at my mom and dad, and if I saw dad having a hard day, or my mom was a school nurse, I felt the weight of that on me. And it always made me feel better to know when they were taking care of themselves. So, if you wouldn't mind either writing it on a piece of paper or sharing it openly, what is one thing you will do today to care for yourself? Yeah. Go for a walk. Yeah. Awesome. Dave. Take a swim. Yeah. Play. Awesome. I'm going to spend time with my dog, Miller. He gives me a lot of love. Again, thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you, Kara. Kara, thanks very much. Thanks for speaking it out loud. It'll help all of us. We are now going to change over to our panel discussion. Wanted to give everyone a chance to stand up and stretch while I ask our panelists to come forward. If you do take a little break, we've got 3 or 4 minutes here, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I know that was a very brief break. We have, as you can see, a full panel of multidisciplinary experts in lots of areas. Did somebody already mention the bringing up of questions? No. All right. So with this panel, we have lots of experts, lots of areas of expertise up on the stage. I would invite everyone as we go, if you have a specific question, just jot it down on one of these little pads, and you can hold it up. Michelle is going to collect the questions and run them up. And if you write like me, be mindful of it being legible, because I write like I'm on the back of a pickup truck. So, all right, so We're going to start. We are going to start with introductions. So for our panel, I'd like you to, I'll just hand you the mic. Is it okay if I start? Oh, you got one. And so we'll start with who you are, where you're from, and what you and or your organization is doing to promote wellness in our community. Okay? This is an, yes, elevator pitch.
Oh, I missed it. I was working the mic.
Oh, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing to promote wellness in our community. And you get to define wellness is from your perspective. We good? And then we'll launch into questions. Lisa, you're going to start?
Sure, happy to. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Miller. I'm Assistant Superintendent with the Marin County Office of Education. I noticed on the agenda, it indicated my doctorate. I'm also a school psychologist and a licensed psychologist. What I get to do at the Marin County Office of Education is support all of our school districts in the deployment of behavioral and mental health services. I view us really as the coordination element of that, and really trying to ensure our districts are able to face outward, meaning their time is focused with the youth and the families and their staff, and we try to work behind the scenes to equip them, to train them, to identify funding sources and recruitment with them. So that's a little bit about it, and I'll pass it on because we could go on and on from an educational space. But I'd love to turn it over to my colleague in my department at MCUE, Kristen Law.
Thank you. So I'm Kristen with Health, Safety, and Support at Marin County Office of Education, and Lisa did a great job of setting up our department. Some of the things that I get to do specifically, and I'm so glad that Bronfenbrenner's ecological model was shown earlier, is we often think about how those systems impact young people, but we often forget that young people also influence those systems. And so what I get to do a lot in my role is support young people and creating opportunities for young people to really influence the systems in the school settings that can promote wellness and well-being through a program called the Student Wellness Ambassador Program, which we launched last year in 5 districts, and we're now in 8 districts, I think, this year. And we're also bringing in, someone also mentioned the importance of bringing in CBOs into the school space, and so through SWAP, we're also doing a lot of that work. There's a lot of friends on stage with me who are part of that and in the crowd. Don and Dave was here earlier and other folks. So really creating those bridges between schools, youth, community-based organizations to support wellness and well-being with our young people. Mostly middle school and high school is who I get to work with.
You guys are so succinct. Hi, my name is Elena Cantor. My pronouns are she, her, siya, which is a non-gendered pronoun in Tagalog. And I am the Senior Director of Wellness Programs and Impact at North Marin Community Services. I'm going to try really hard to be succinct, but we are a multi-service nonprofit organization, and we offer a whole variety of programs that support wellness, youth wellness, and support families. So I'll just be very brief. We provide child development, mental health programs. We have Latin Aid programs, including promotores and newcomer supports, and we have case management. And so I'll just talk briefly about our mental health program areas. We have kind of 3 legs to that table, and we provide school-based mental health services. We have served almost 400 youth per year in the Novato Unified School District, and are now growing to serve the Shoreline Unified School District as well. And we provide services for individuals, families, and groups in our outpatient community mental health clinic. And we also have a really amazing program supported by BHRS, thank you, Matt, and we're able to provide uninsured and low-income Spanish-speaking family members, children and adults in the community with mental health services in alignment with our partner agency, Canal Alliance. So nice to see you guys over there. And we finally offer free, confidential mental health, case management, and reproductive health services through the Novato Teen Clinic, which we cooperate with Marin Community Clinics. So we have some flyers on the table. Really happy to talk to anybody afterwards if you have questions about our services.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Cruiser, and I'm the manager and the early childhood specialist for Help Me Grow Marin. Help Me Grow Marin serves prenatal to 13 families, children, providers. We work with the healthcare providers, the early care and education providers, in providing not only developmental screening and behavioral health screening for children, but also helping families through case management and working with, together with providers to serve the families to the best of our ability. We also are involved with strengthening systems in our county and bringing people together to really talk about where there are gaps and really how can we work together towards better services for children, especially the 0 to 5 population, but also for the school-age population into teens.
Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Diamond, he, him pronouns. I'm the program director at Buckaloo Programs, overseeing the suicide prevention program, so the 988 Crisis Call Center, covering Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Lake counties. Also, I oversee the mental health outpatient counseling program in Marin with Buckaloo Programs as well. Buckaloo Programs is a large organization. It has a whole bunch of different amazing programs. I could go on and on about all the different types of services that we can provide as an agency. All sorts of things, anything from sobering and detox, crisis residential, housing, independent living, as well as mental health services and the crisis call center, the 988 program. When it comes to health and wellness, especially for youth, I think it's really important for us to recognize that suicidality is across all sorts of age ranges. It includes youth, adolescents, teens. It includes caregivers. It includes grandparents, aunts, uncles, community members, neighbors, friends. So it really touches all age ranges and all communities. So it's important to really recognize that, and that's something we are very mindful of in our program. We also are working really hard over the last couple years to increase the diversity of our staff and of our program to more accurately reflect our communities that we're trying to serve, as well as to connect more efficiently with the people who really need us, right? And when I say diversity, that includes, again, age, race, gender, all sorts of different types of cultural identities, not just one type of category, kind of across the board, trying to make sure that we are doing the best we can to provide the highest quality services possible. Because we know when people call us, it's during a particularly difficult moment, possibly the most difficult moment the person has ever faced. So the last thing we want them worried about is whether or not the person's going to be able to connect with them. We want them to be able to kind of be able to regulate, establish safety, and make sure that they can really get the support they need.
Hi, I'm Sandra Ramirez-Griggs from Youth and Family Services, and we are located in the Canal District of San Rafael at the Connection Center. We provide mental health services to Medi-Cal recipients 0 to 21, and they typically are on the high, moderate to severe side of symptoms. We provide individual treatment, family treatment, case management, peer services, medication services, collaterals, referral resources, and community education. We have a total team of 18 clinicians, and we are also, as Steve mentioned, a diverse team ourselves. We do have bilingual capacity, the majority of which is Spanish-speaking and bicultural, but we also have a clinician who's from Ivory Coast and speaks French, and we have a clinician who is Persian and speaks Farsi. And believe it or not, it has been utilized. So we also really rely on the collaborations and partners that we have. And most everybody on this panel is somebody that we collaborate with and partner with that is key to the work that we do.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gabby Agar, and I am here representing Marin 9 to 25, which is a coalition of both youth and adults trying to seek positive health outcomes for youth in Marin ages 9 to 25. And I help manage our youth wellness campaign called Find Your Way. And we recently just put out a youth resource guide, which was developed by youth for youth in Marin. And we have it both a printed version, which is in English and in Spanish, and our online resource guide. What I would say is the difference between the two is that our printed resource guide has testimonies and a lot of great information on why it's important for a youth who is reading it to get help and tools that they can use, as well as our 4 main resources on there. And then the whole goal is to get them to scan the QR code to go to our online resource guide, which is a lot more customizable and accessible. Within my role, I have a very unique position as a transitional aged youth, where I not only help guide and provide input within Find Your Way, but I also serve as a youth liaison between the youth and our partnerships. And we also launched our scholarship opportunity, which is a $500 scholarship for youth ages 12 to 25 who are a part of some sort of community initiative or internship, because we truly believe that the work that the youth do in the community, they should be compensated for their time. And a quick background around me is that I graduated from Dominican in 2021 with my bachelor's in global public health and a minor in leadership, and I'm proud to announce that I will be graduating with my MPH this December.
Congratulations. Well, I first just want to introduce myself. My name is Lisa Levitt. I am a pediatrician at Marin Community Clinic, and I started working there in 1996. So I've been there for a minute. But I want to highlight that the reason that I've been able to work at MCC so long is that I do not do it alone. And I just want to recognize my colleagues, if any of you are here. If you have worked at Marin Community Clinic or are working at Marin Community Clinic, just raise your hand. Yay. And as we can see from the large number of speakers here, child mental health is a big topic. And so I just wanted to focus on something that we offer at Marin Community Clinic that is unique. It's called Integrated Behavioral Health Services. And it's really a fancy name for a mental health care provided by a team made up of the primary care provider, the patient's regular doctor or nurse practitioner, the behavioral health clinician, so the therapist or the psychiatrist, and the patient. And all members of the team work together under the same roof at the clinic. So why is this an effective strategy? Well, primary care is the home where patients come for all of their care, both physical and mental. Primary care providers prescribe about 80% of all psychotropic medications, such as antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, ADHD medications. Many patients prefer to see a counselor at their primary care clinic site. And health outcomes are often better when behavioral health conditions are treated at the same time as medical conditions. So how does integrated behavioral health model work at MCC? The clinic has 12 behavioral health providers on staff to provide individual and group therapy with in-person and telehealth options. Therapy is provided by Spanish-speaking therapists or with video translation. We also have 3 psychiatrists or psychiatric nurse practitioners who provide medication and consultation support for the primary care providers. One important piece of the mental health puzzle at MCC is our team of case management. They are our care navigators, and they work through CalAIM, providing complex care support. They work with our new program, Healthy Steps, to support parents during well visits. And we have 2 longtime pediatric behavioral specialists who screen and refer all pediatric patients for developmental and behavioral concerns. So who do MCC therapists see? Patients with mild to moderate behavioral health issues, anxiety, panic attacks, depression. They can provide 8 to 12 sessions. All MCC patients are screened with questions about their mental health during their regular visits. Patients can also self-refer and request to see a therapist. We have warm handoffs, which happen the same day that a patient raises a concern, and we also have same week appointments available. But there are gaps, and I'm just going to highlight a few of those. Our system of care is not perfect. MCC is unable to see severe behavioral health concerns, and there's often difficulty connecting to that next higher level of care. We try to continue seeing patients as a bridge until they can get to that higher level of care, but this oftentimes decreases the access that we do have for mild to moderate patients. As many of you probably know, there's a high no-show rate for therapy and psychiatry appointments. And there's difficulty filling those morning slots for children because of school. Communication between service providers, especially between MCC and the schools, MCC and the county, MCC and our community partners, is difficult, I have to admit. The system is confusing for patients. They are often unsure who is providing behavioral health support for them. And I really would encourage a common communication tool that we can all use to talk to one another. One possible solution, maybe there is a role for care navigators to serve as this communication hub so that all involved service providers can be on the same page. And finally, on a personal note, I have to say that integrated behavioral health services at the clinic has really helped me to decrease my own burnout. Having those services right under the same roof has really helped me to have confidence that our patients are not going to slip through the cracks, that they'll get the care that they need. Thanks. I'll pass it on.
Hi, I'm Janet Birkin, and my pronouns are she, her. I work with the SPAR Center here in Marin County, and we are Marin's hub for celebrating and supporting our LGBTQ plus and HIV positive community members, also their families. And we aim to create a sense of belonging and community, to create connection, provide peer support and community support groups. And we have Marin Pride event coming up again. If you've been missing it since 2019, we're really excited. It'll be at Stafford Lake on October 22nd, and everyone's invited. It's going to be amazing. But to highlight a few of our programs, we also serve Ryan White clients. So we have HIV prevention services. We have client services, including food pantry and help with connecting to other services they might need. We sometimes even help with rent and other bills like that. We have Q groups, so groups for queer youth in the schools, many schools in Marin. And if yours doesn't have one, get in touch and we will work on that together. We also have once a week in some of the schools a drop-in counseling service, individual for youth in the schools. And I just want to highlight that of all the statistics we've been seeing, LGBTQ youth are at a much higher risk in their marginalized community for all these challenges, and our suicidality and self-harm statistics are very, very high. I could go into it, but I will continue on with what else we do have. So I feel like, having people who have expertise in working with youth, especially who are LGBTQ+, is key. And we do have a limited number of free counseling available. So if you work with youth and think that they could benefit, please send them our way. And we also focus on older adults, especially to create sense of belonging and community. LGBTQ+ adults and HIV positive older adults tend to isolate or even go back into the closet as they get older. So we want to help minimize that. And again, as we've heard from so many amazing speakers, the sense of belonging is so key. We also do harm reduction. Yes, we also have so many things, but our harm reduction is so important. We have syringe access. We have access to HIV testing. We have a goal of getting to 0 in Marin, 0 cases, and we're closer, right? We also provide PrEP access and PEP. These are preventative against HIV infections. And I really hope we'll see you out at Marin Pride. That is just going to be an amazing event. And I'll pass. And I just want to say on a personal note, I'm the mom of a trans person, and the SPAR Center and Spectrum before that have always been there for us. And you know, my son came out at a time when nobody was talking about transgender youth, and I am a resource for that, so please do connect with me if that's going on for you.
All right, my name is Evelyn Grimaldi. I am the supervisor of the Early Childhood Mental Health Program through JFCS, which is Jewish Family and Children's Services. We have, we're an agency here in Marin. We have 2 other ones around the Bay. With various different services, but our little program, the ECMH program, serves child care centers in Novato, San Rafael, Marin City, Point Reyes. We support programs such as Community Action Marin, Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center, Paper Mill Creek, and BCC is a big one too. Not only do we serve the child care centers and the classrooms, but we also support the home visitor programs in CAM. Annually, around 600 children are served under our program, about 135 staff. So our program really focuses on just being present in the centers and providing more preventative services. So not just being there when a crisis starts, but just being there and really focusing on the relationship between us and the staff. I can go on and on, but yeah, that'll just be my snippet for right now.
All right, panelists. So nice to meet you and get to know a little bit about what you and your programs provide. All right, we're going to have some questions here. These are some softball questions. We'll start some conversation starters. Maybe this first one, Jana, you were speaking to this and alluding to this, and maybe we can start there. First question is, for the panel, for the whole panel, are there or do you see specific demographics in this county that may be more at risk of not getting the help they need, either because it's not seen or they don't have access to the help, or the help that's provided or delivered to them is not culturally specific or relevant to this particular demographic when they're under stress or having mental health struggles? So maybe you want to start there, and then we'll see what the other panel
Thank you. I would love to start, as one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that the SPAR Center has had, as you mentioned, a challenge in meeting the needs of anyone who speaks a language other than English, and we are really focusing on our hiring practices in order to expand our ability to serve. And we just recently hired our new director of programs, Renato Talhadas, who is Portuguese and Spanish speaking. And so we're going to be starting groups and individual counseling that will have those 2 languages. So we're really, really happy about that. And I think that that is exactly what is needed. And also with regard to LGBTQ plus, especially the youth, is that we're seeing that there's so much more, or so many more youth coming out in communities where there is lower acceptance and understanding. And so we're partnering with our community partners to make sure that everyone's getting the information that's current and is needed. And that can happen through our training institute too. So if you want to collaborate and come up to level up our LGBTQ services in your particular zone, we'd love to partner there. Who else wants to take
I think a demographic that is very overlooked is the young child. We have a growing population of children between the ages of 2 and 7 that are really struggling. It may be developmental, it may be environmental, it may be trauma, but they are misunderstood. Behaviors away, children tell us that there's something not working, and we don't have enough providers out there that understand that and to look for and to help, and that's what Help Me Grow spends a lot of time with families and providers doing, is to really triage and try to figure out where the root of the problem is. But we have a growing crisis in our community for the child that is has some social emotional issues and or trauma, and we don't have enough providers working with that group or with the families, and so that becomes, it used to be a very small population of children in a classroom we might have seen 15 years ago. For kids, we are seeing up to 60% or 80% of the kids in classrooms right now, especially since COVID. So this is becoming a bigger issue that we're faced with every day.
I would say I think it's not just one population. I think in agreement with what you said related to COVID, it seems like the acuity of all of the people that we're working with has just skyrocketed and it hasn't eased off. Unfortunately, we, at our organization, we use a framework called the 3 realms of ACEs as an idea for how we've approached our theory of change as an organization this year. So we're looking at how adversity and trauma impacts not only the family home, but also the community. So adversity on the community level, and then also finally in the environmental realm. So all of these different kind of traumas and adversities, how they've impacted us, and we're looking at how do we make an impact as an organization, how do we look at supporting the diverse community that we serve. I think we've done a fairly good job at our organization. About 60% of our staff speak English plus another language or more, primarily Spanish, and then we also use Boost Lingo, which is a simultaneous interpretation tool. However, when we're working with people that have such acute stressors and multiple complex psychosocial stressors, it's hard to figure out where to start sometimes, and people are experiencing housing insecurity, food insecurity, people who are extremely low income in a county where it takes $65 an hour just to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. We're talking about people with very difficult situations, and there may be different service providers trying to support the family, and we're often seeing families with young children, teens, that are feeling over-resourced and often don't know how to trust the service providers that are in their lives. So finding kind of that care navigator role, I think, is really important that you talked about, Dr. Levitt, and being able to slow down a little bit to move fast and focus on care coordination, I think is a key. So I'll just stop there.
Yeah, and I would add a little bit to what everyone has said so far, but also throw a couple more groups into that mix. To the point about youth and young children, there was actually an article in San Francisco, the San Francisco Chronicle in August, and it was I believe it was Blue Shield executive that was quoted as saying the reason why young children have higher rates of depression, anxiety, and mental health struggles is because they don't have enough life experience and they haven't been through enough things to then see that, yeah, I know. Yes, to all those reactions. Yeah, and that they haven't been through enough to see themselves come out on the other side and be okay going through the adversity. Could not disagree more. I could go on all day about that, as I'm sure all of us could. We all just went through a pandemic. We have social media. We have exposure to children seeing people who are their age range being hurt in such a wide variety of ways, and they have 24/7 access and exposure to these things happening all throughout the country. We didn't all have that historically. So that is just, again, more and more traumatization being revisited over and over and over on a 24/7 type of access to that, right? So that just kind of compounds the challenges that people are facing. And also when we think about specific to Marin, I think the Black and African American community is a community that we really need to be paying much more attention to and providing much more support to. I think it's one thing to talk the talk around diversity, and there's a lot of talking the talk in the Bay Area as a whole around diversity and support. It's another thing to walk the walk and to really take the actions and take the steps that we need to provide what's needed, not from our perspective, but from that community's perspective, right? Not us saying, here's what we think you need. So I think that's something that comes up often in Marin. Also Latinx, Latina community is another population, another group that, again, it's not about our perspective as the provider, it's about what people in that community are needing, and then being able to meet people where they're at and provide what they're asking for. So I would just throw those pieces in as well.
Thank you, Steve. I have a lineup going. So just to clarify, so for those of you who oversee or work alongside service providers, by show of hands, how many of you have programs that are able to provide services in Spanish, in-person services? Well, 988 hotline, but there, so you would say you have ready access to people who can call up in their monolingual Spanish or other languages. Do you want to speak to that? Just
so we have access for, it's a 24/7 hotline. So for, I would say about 8 hours each day, we have somebody who's on the line that is fluent in Spanish, bilingual, bicultural. I would love to see that get to 24/7. We're working on that. I'll be honest, we're not there yet. We want to get there. If someone's contacting us at a time when someone's not currently working on the hotline that can speak fluent Spanish, then we do have translation services that we can access and utilize. But yeah, it's definitely a top priority goal of ours to make sure we have access 24/7 to somebody who's bilingual, bicultural.
Okay. And hands again, just want to reiterate this point. So you all work alongside or oversee programs that can provide, a specific question was around Spanish. And then in schools, I don't know if we talked to like the ability to access counselors or on-site, it varies, right? It varies district to district and school to school, and maybe there's open positions that are meant to be providing that service, and we're looking, yeah?
To set a little bit of the landscape around mental health and behavioral health in schools, it wasn't so long ago that in order to access those services in the schools, you actually had to be found eligible for special education, you had to have a disability, and then there were resources provided to you as a youth. During that time, if you weren't identified as having a disability, the way the systems were structured is that you then more than likely would be referred out to a community-based organization or to a private therapist or another entity. It just was not really under the umbrella of public education at that time. It's awesome where we are now because there is so much recognition of behavioral and mental health services being provided to youth regardless of whether or not you have a disabling condition, because we have the captive audience. Youth are at schools, and we know that the access to mental health and behavioral services drops significantly when it's outside the school setting just because of complexities of getting to the services. With the best of intentions, trying to make those services available, it can be very hard for families to get to the clinic or get to the location where the service is. So really, you know, in my career, I've been a public educator for 20 years, always in the mental health space. It really was just in the last 7 years, maybe or so, a little cushion on both sides of that, where mental health services being brought into the schools and having it be school district responsibility started to take off. So we are navigating it as fast as we can. Definitely some school districts are a little bit more advanced than other school districts. That could definitely be because of resources. Nonetheless, I can speak on behalf of all of our school districts in Marin, and there are 17. everybody is seeking and wanting to grow the behavioral health and mental health services provided in the school setting. As you can imagine, the location of some of our districts in West Marin, that can be really hard to find a therapist that is able to get in over there. We struggle just as any entity does to bring on and recruit adequate representation of the youth and the families that we serve, but there is great effort done with the school districts and through the partnerships with their CBOs. This definitely takes all of us working together. Districts can't do it on their own. So it's an ongoing pursuit. I would say, knowing in the big scope of public education for the centuries it's been in existence, this is still very new to bring in general ed, behavioral, and mental health and have it under the governance of public education. And Marin, I think, has actually done an exceptional job to try to get in place as many resources as possible. Similarly, though, to everybody else up here, we have a long way to go, a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of really good work to do. And it's counties like this that will make it happen, where you have events like this that bring the multiple entities together to collaborate and communicate and problem solve. So I'm really hopeful about us serving youth. I think we have to remain hopeful.
Great. I want to ask a specific question to Dr. Lisa Levitt. And then maybe when we conclude at 11:30, maybe Sandra, you could, because there are questions around accessing services, maybe thereabouts 11:30, you can say something about the whole BHRS's access team and how people can get help for any host of mental health stuff, but a whole host of struggles. So first, for Dr. Lisa Levitt, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. So from a medical expert standpoint, the last couple of years, so we talk about mental health, we're thinking about, emotional and behavioral symptoms. One, can you speak to what we might see in terms of nonverbal and physical symptoms that tell us kids are struggling, because it might not be so obvious to us? And part of that is the last couple of years, have you seen an uptick in particular symptomology and particular reports of adversity? Like, we're seeing much more of this in our young children than we did, say, pre-pandemic or during the pandemic?
Yeah, those are both great questions. So I think, and I have one of my colleagues here, Karen Schmidt, to kind of back me up. She's in charge of our pediatric behavioral health program, a clinical psychologist. But I think she can attest as well that a lot of times the symptoms are physical. So, kids, when they come in complaining of stomach ache, headache, trouble sleeping, we certainly do a full workup and we certainly exhaust all possible medical explanations, but sometimes we're left with, these are physical manifestations of stress and anxiety, and that's the way it shows up in the body. And then your second question is, are we seeing more of anything in particular? I think, over the course of my career, I think my job used to be a lot simpler. And over, I would say, the last, second half of my tenure at MCC, just the number of children that I'm seeing for stress, anxiety, depression has really gone through the roof. Maria Niggle wrote her IJ article, and it said 1 in 5, children will have a diagnosable mental health issue. And on some days, I feel like it's a lot higher than that. Sometimes the majority of my day is spent really listening and supporting and calling in care navigators and setting up warm handoffs with the behavioral health provider that day, and really just trying to get kids hooked in, as quickly as possible before their issues go from mild to moderate to severe. So I think really time is of the essence, and I when I see long waiting lists and patients are sometimes just given lists of resources and left to navigate, these issues on their own. It's just, a lot of barriers exist for our patients to actually access care. And I don't know, Karen, if you have anything else to add, but as far as what you're seeing more of, a lot more suicidality, a lot more suicidal thoughts. I think now that we're asking, that we're screening everybody at the clinic regularly, with questionnaires, we're finding out that, kids have probably been struggling for a while. And, and now that we're asking, it's important that we have actually some resources that are timely and, to help kids through their rough patches. But
To tie a couple of threads together, because one of the questions asks specifically about DV and its impact on kids, and our child welfare partners aren't in the room, but I know what they would say. And during the pandemic, there was a huge upswing in reports of domestic violence for lots of obvious reasons. And then so all the stuff that went down during the pandemic, ramifications like inside the body, inside the behavior, inside the relationships, inside the parents' relationships. And I think a lot of us are seeing and feeling that now. I think the last forum we did on early childhood mental health, a lot of the ECMH folks were talking to us about we're getting kids who are 5 and they're just biting all the time and grunting all the time because of this sort of delay in some of this learning and socialization that happened during the pandemic and lots of other reasons, right? So we might be hitting the stuff that was sort of seeds that were planted and watered through all these family stressors, right?
Yeah, no, I think kids are always little mirrors of what's going on, in their family and their, reflecting what's going on, so.
Great. Does anyone else want to speak to that question of what we're seeing in symptoms these days and what it might reflect socially or familial?
One of our intensive care coordination case management programs is called Amigos de la Familia. We receive referrals from Child Family Services, the child welfare system, and we've been operating this program for 24 years. Mayra Rambola in the audience here is one of our case managers. And we saw last year in the data that 65% of the families referred to us were referred in relation to a domestic violence related incident, and that's about 20% higher than our baseline for that statistic. So I think we're definitely seeing that, and we're quite often collaborating care with Center for Domestic Peace and Marin Community Clinics, among other partners, because this is obviously very impactful for the children. And so we're trying to provide mental health services for the children and for the remaining parent that's in the home, because this has ramifications that need many years for healing.
Thank you. There's so many good questions here. So we're up against it. I want to just, a couple things. Sandra, can you speak? There's lots of questions on how we can access the appropriate service. How can we qualify for the appropriate service? So can you speak to the access team that exists in the county, what they do, what they don't do, and then if anybody else has any a sentence they want to share about accessing services from your perspective?
Sure. So I'll start with providing the access intake line for everyone, and that's 1-888-818-1115. And that is a line that is available 24/7 in terms of that it functions. It's not manned 24/7, but the person calling can provide their name, date of birth, and their Medi-Cal number. So that's the thing. This isn't a line for private insurance. However, I will say that there are some families that have Kaiser Medi-Cal, and this is their mental health line. So they can call. There might be some, juggling that has to happen, but we do provide specialty mental health services for the Kaiser Medi-Cal clients. So in terms of the access team itself, Just for transparency, they are going through a bit of a flux right now. There's a new supervisor, Connor Pierce. Some of you might recognize the name. He was the supervisor for the mobile crisis response team here at the county. He's now the lead in the access team. They've had a disruption in staff. Some staff have left, some new staff have been hired. All this to say, it's taking a minute to get the bandwidth and everybody on the same page to offer the best services that they can. So there have been delays. There's definitely been waiting lists and significant wait times. We are addressing that. So just to give you an idea is Matt and I are in almost daily communication sometimes with the access supervisor when there are acute cases that come to the access line. Then we work together to move them through to get them assessed. So the access team is really the assessors. They're all clinicians. They are assessing for the level of care that the child and or adult needs. And that will determine where they are referred to. So it could be that if they're mild to moderate, they will be referred to one of our partner organizations, the CBO. If it is an adult who has some severe issues, they will be referred to one of our multiple adult teams that will either provide substance use disorder support, case management, mental health, life skills support, etc. And same with the children. It will be determined what level of care that child needs, and then the appropriate referral will be made. I just want to add too that we have 5 clinicians on our team that are specifically trained to work with 0 to 5. They've all been trained in the UCSF modality, child-parent psychotherapy. And just this week, I mean, I say it kind of with a smile and a frown because I'm glad that they're coming to us, but just this week we got 4 new little ones. And so I am glad that they're making it to us, but at the same time, it just goes to show that they are definitely in need.
I would like to speak on more about the Find Your Way resource guide and sort of how that's set up and how that was planned. So our resource guide, when you go online, it asks you, is it an emergency or non-emergency? So let's say non-emergency. If you click emergency, it will take you to like a lot of our crisis lines like 988 and the Trevor project. So let's say you click non-emergency. Then it will ask you, are you looking for help for yourself or for someone else? So let's click me. And then it'll take you to our list of categories, which again were created by the youth. We had a lot of discussions about it. Some of the categories are LGBTQ+, mental health, substance use, physical health, academic, and career. So let's say we need help around mental health. So we'll click that category, and then underneath that are subcategories, such as bullying. Do you need a crisis support? Do you need support groups around mental health? Or we also added a new subcategory for transitional age youth. Do you need specifically resources for youth ages 18 to 26? So let's say we click bullying, crisis support, and a support group. And so then when you click next, all of our resources that come up are with those tags, and within it, it will say whether that resource is confidential, if it's private, what insurances that they accept, or if that resource is free. And many of the resources that are listed there, I know you guys are here today. And the big thing that we wanted to keep in mind when we added our providers to this list is that these resources are youth accessible, meaning that they don't have to really go through their parents or their caregivers to have access to this sort of help. And so I encourage all of you, if you would like to take a look at our printed resource guide, I have one on me, or you could visit marin9to25.org to take a look at our online resource guide as well. And if you are interested in wanting to be listed, let me know, or if your organization is already listed and you want to update the information, let me know that as well. We are going to continue to update this resource guide and have worked really hard to connect our youth with all of our partners to not only build trust with our youth and our partners, but hopefully to foster more conversation around having these youth access help and meeting youth where they're at. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. So real quick, I want to just confirm a couple things. Steve, can you confirm, so the crisis line, do I call that only if I have suicidal ideation?
No, so it could be any type of mental health crisis that you're experiencing. The heavy majority of those tend to have some level of suicidal ideation or thought or feeling associated with them. But if somebody's experiencing a mental health crisis, they can contact 988. We can do a combination of things, either safety planning, verbal de-escalation over the phone, connection to resources. So if it is something that truly requires some level of in-person response or needs a different type of resource that we can't provide directly, we could get people the contact information or get them in touch with that resource. About over 99% of the people who call us, it gets resolved over the phone, so we don't actually need an in-person response. Then there's about 3 or 4% that's mobile crisis or safe team or some other type of in-person response, and then only about 2 to 3% that would require law enforcement or an ambulance or something of that nature. So yeah, if it's a mental health crisis and you're not sure where to start, but it's not like a violent situation where you would need law enforcement to arrive immediately, then you could contact 988, and that could be a good starting point.
Perfect. And then last one, Lisa, can you speak to if we're interested in referring to MCC or a parent wants to bring in a kid for behavioral health support? What does that look like?
So for our MCC patients, we have enrollment counselors. So first would be finding out whether you qualify. We also have a sliding scale for our uninsured. And then I think when the parent, first makes that phone call to get an appointment, it could be for any concern, physical or mental health related. So, that appointment can be made and we can start from there.
All right, thanks. I think there's 100 more questions, but we're up against it. So a round of applause for our panel.
Thank you so much to all our panelists today. I am so grateful to see everyone on the same stage, to see who is providing and doing the thinking in regards to our children and families in Marin. So thank you so much for the work that you do. We're grateful for you. Thank you. I have the honor to introduce our next speaker, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few things first. During the panel and during this conversation, I heard some overarching themes, things that I think we can't leave this room without acknowledging. The task before us around providing care and mental health also includes supporting our workforce, our mental health caregivers, and their work. As we've heard from many people, struggling to fill empty positions, I think this is something that to me is a systems breakdown that needs to be addressed. And I look at everyone here in this room who all hold different levers of support and power. What can we do to create that workforce that our community needs? What's needed? What are some pathways into being a care navigator, being a mental health clinician, working in our schools through the Student Ambassador Program? What can we do together to make that a reality so the folks who need our care get our care? I also heard something that was absent, and I'm looking way back in the room to Ivana, who works with mothers experiencing postpartum depression and what that looks like. Our path into this world begins with our birth and before our birth and in those families. And what is the support that our communities are receiving, our mothers are receiving before they have their children? And so I just want to acknowledge that was absent in this conversation, and I'll be curious to hear more about that. Lastly, another component that really is near and dear to my heart is how we're working together to meet the needs across the ages. And like I said, it starts prenatally, and it goes on it goes on throughout our lifespan. And so I think the challenge for me right now in listening to this is what we're going to do about it and how we're going to change some of these systemic issues that don't just get resolved in a clinical setting. They get resolved because we're all working together. And so this is not one person's responsibility, it's all of our responsibility. So my call to action for this group right here is, how are we going to do this together? Who's going to make the call? Who's going to bring the people together? Are we going to work transparently? Are we going to bring, our best thought partnership together? Are we going to build the trust so that we can do this better? That is my hope at the end of the day, and I hope you can carry that with you, and always know that I am available to talk to. If you have thoughts or ideas, I would love to continue this conversation with you. Thank you. So for those of you who are very familiar with First Five, you may know that we do not work in a silo. We're not just located in Marin. First Fives exist in every county in California. And we are a part of bigger networks. And one of our bigger networks, that has been there almost the entire time First Fives have existed, is First Five California. And we are so lucky today to be able to have the executive director of First Five California, Jackie Wong, with us to talk about Stronger Starts, creating safe and stable relationships and environments to combat toxic stress response and adverse childhood experiences. Thank you, Jackie, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm trying to kind of come up here without tripping on things. How's everybody doing? It's heavy, right? It's a heavy, heavy topic. How many of you actually know the origins of First Five California? Couple people. My claim to fame is this was an initiative by Rob Reiner. Right? So Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, 25 years ago. So we're embarking on our 25-year anniversary. And one of the biggest things that we do, again, having Rob Reiner be in Hollywood, is our media campaign. Right? A third of our budget goes to changing hearts and minds and ensuring that issues of children and family 0-5 are top of mind. Hey, who's calling me? Okay, hopefully it's not school. Of course that happens with technology. So, as mentioned, my name is Jackie Tu-Hung Wong. She, her, hers are my pronouns, and I'm actually just so humbled and grateful to be sharing this space with you all. Actually, several years ago, actually possibly many moons ago, I began my work and commitment to children with a program just down the street. The Marin City Children's Program, started by David Guggenheim. I'm not sure if many of you knew that. Even some of my friends possibly did not know that, who are in this room, who've known me for also many moons. Way back in the 1900s, right? So how many of us were from the 1900s? And though we didn't have the research at the time, because that came a little bit later after the establishment of the program, it was born of the fundamental things that we know to support children in their life journey. And it's kismet that this was in my notes today, Gabby, because I landed this morning in deep thought, and that was hope. Hope. that fundamentally knowing that the traumatic things that happen to you do not define who you are, and the future is one of pure abundance. Knowing that if we could only see it, and if we could only believe it, that we will have the courage and the audacity to be it. Modified from Amanda Gorman, so I do not. That's stuck with me ever since. Again, the courage and the audacity to be different and hope for a future for all of us. So what is this Stronger Starts? Can we imagine a world where all children have the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary for healthy development? Again, this is research-based. We know that SSNREs are the buffer against adverse childhood experiences. We know that because, yes, we're all therapists, but also sometimes the rest of the world needs the data. Well, that, my friends, is First Five California's audacious goal, that we have a commitment to create these SSNREs for all children 0 to 5 within a generation. And some people say that's 25 years. If you work with indigenous communities, it's 100 years, because that's how long it takes for the land to turn over and heal itself. Right, we do work today for generations of humans, children, families, and communities we will never meet. Right, I stand before you, and you stand before your ancestors. And we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. This commitment and audacious goal stems from our North Star that was developed by our chair at the time, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who was also California's first Surgeon General during the pandemic. When she was asked to really, okay, do you not just want to shift into crisis mode at this moment because the world is imploding, right? She said, no, we need to double down on children's, youth, community, behavioral, and mental health. Because this, my friends, is the time that we need it most, because we are building the infrastructure. Everything you just heard from the panel was predictable, right? So even in the midst of the pandemic, being the first California Surgeon General, being rooted in ACEs, talking about mental health and well-being, people probably thought, why are you not actually giving up, focus on other things? I had the blessing of, I always say, that's one of my biggest things, I got to be hired by her and really rooted in this, that we believe that creating a healing-centered, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive system is necessary for children's long-term healthy development. Healing-centered, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive. What does that mean? That means that we actually begin to bring awareness and education about adverse childhood experiences through our public awareness campaign. Again, focus group targeting highest needs communities. And again, we've talked about this all day long. I can read slides, so can you. I'm more of a conversationalist, if you have not noticed. And so again, focusing on the anxiety, chronic mental health, learning challenges, shortened lifespan, because we know that ACEs early on has us long-term predictability about your long-term health, whether or not you will be successful in life. And quite frankly, this was said before too, is that ACEs impacts babies in utero. The constant toxic stress of children, and San Diego First Five says children are born learning, but however, what happens to mothers while they're pregnant deeply impacts how they will enter this world, deeply tied to zip codes, deeply tied to equity and justice. Okay, technology. And beyond bringing awareness and education, we want to provide practical tips and tools and strategies to help buffer against ACEs, right? And we have 4 specific tools. And again, you can read the bullet points my staff put together, and they'd probably be mad that I'm not reading from them. But again, I'm just so grateful for the conversations, the vulnerability, the open-mindedness, the commitment to children that you all have had today, that you've spent the last couple of hours thinking and unpacking for Marin. The 4 pillars are, basically be calm. What does that mean? Breathe. How many of you are actually breathing deeply right now? Or are we breathing shallow? Exactly, there are a couple of people, right? So maybe some of you saw some of our breathing campaign, like our bridge campaign between Talk, Read, Sing. We're known for Talk, Read, Sing. So our bridge campaign was a dragon, where you go, right? That opportunity to be calm and reset. And though it was a tool to have caregivers and parents interact with children, we learned when the adults do that, we reset. We become calm. That's one bucket. 2, be steady, right? Be consistent. Create consistency where possible. For example, just establish routines and schedule so there's a predictability, a reliance, so be steady. We all need that structure. Whether or not it's sports, I'm not big on the discipline side. Badminton was my sport, however. I think that's a team sport, right? Yes. 3, be there and be present. Specifically, put down the phone. Close your computer. How many of us were on our phone today? I was one of them, so I'm guilty, right? How often with these, we're so connected to the world. When do we take the time to stare at everybody in their eyes, feel their energy, understand their vibe? And our little ones need it most, right? They know. They feel us. They feel everything that we go through. Ooh, sorry, this is not my computer. They know everything we go through, right? Even for those few moments, a few seconds out of your busy day, just give them a smile, be present. The 4th is be nurturing. Again, building on our Talk, Read, Sing campaign, I encourage us all to think about how to be nurturing to ourselves so that we can be nurturing to our children. Take the breaks. Be kind to yourselves. In those times of stress, when you are kind to yourself, when you understand how to nurture yourself, when you understand what self-care really means, you can be calm, be steady, and be present, right? And then you can support the parents and caregivers and communities that we all are committed to. So these are some data that I thought that maybe some folks in the room are interested in. In California, 1/3 of households with children are experiencing difficult situations. 1/3, 30%. 2 million children, 2 million in this state. And over 60% are affected, and over 60% of adults have at least one ACE. 16.3% of adults have experienced 4 ACEs or more. And you all know this. These are the events that create adverse childhood experiences: physical and emotional neglect, divorce, substance abuse, physical and verbal abuse, mental health, death and separation from a family member, incarceration of a family member. And how do we deal with this in our bodies? That's why, like what we talked about today, the sports, the breathing, we feel it in our bodies, right? I feel it in my body right now when I'm talking about it. I have an ACE score of 6. And I work on it all the time. But I stand before to be able to talk about the opportunity for us to work through it together, right? So, and it's just our body's response to prolonged exposure. And if we don't buffer against that, there are long-term negative chronic disease, early death, diabetes, etc. So it's really important to ground ourselves in understanding ACEs and stick with the hope, knowing that we can buffer against that. And that is the premise of this campaign. So I wanted to show you through a few clips, and we're hoping that the sound will work and not too loud. We tested it earlier. That begins to open up that conversation in mass media, to the public, about what ACEs is and what parents can do. So these are the signs of toxic stress.
We mark every inch they grow, but something can be growing that we don't see. It's what doctors call toxic stress. There are steps parents can take to help. Learn 4 things you can do to overcome toxic stress at first5california.com. So
it's just a little snippet of, again, beginning to kind of create those opportunities of hope. Oops. The other thing is what we learned from research groups is that people really like the science and really trust doctors and clinicians, right? So it's really important to really understand the science, the health, to kind of connect it to their well-being. So this is a clip on beginning to...
There's an issue affecting many children that I can't solve alone. It's called toxic stress. It builds up inside, increasing the risk for lasting health issues. Learn 4 things you can do to overcome toxic stress at first5california.com.
And again, this is the first of its kind campaign. Again, we were just so excited about it. And when we launched it a few months ago with Dr. Burke Harris, we were, oh my goodness, okay. With Dr. Burke Harris, we almost were in tears because the energy, the idea that we could change hearts and minds, and an orientation about what this was. I'm sorry, I'm so fidgety, right? Like, was just exciting, right? Many of us have been therapists therapists for decades, and we're like, what is this? What, we need more than just us, right? So how do we begin to have a mass marketing campaign to educate the community and know that there is power within their homes to change? Because a lot of times we get stuck in the I can't, I won't. What happened to me is who I am, and I cannot change. And that is just not true. The science we are so quick to write a prescription, and there is a place for prescriptions, right? I'm not going to say that they're not. However, like, what about the idea of writing a prescription for home visiting, for Help Me Grow, right, in utero, making sure that we're making those connections. That idea that, put that in Caleen, right? So if you've ever heard, gotten into those conversations with Dr. Burke Harris and I, again, so quick to provide a pill, but what the antidote to ACEs is: safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. And that's about community, right? So here are just a few things that the team has pulled together from research that can help prevent and buffer against toxic stress. Again, establishing daily routines, being consistent, doing fun and positive things, expressing love and affection. So go give people some hugs, high fives, affirmations. That makes a difference. And I know I'm probably bumping up against lunch. I'm good. I got the thumbs up. And again, when parents and caregivers create those safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments, the effects of ACEs can be minimized and prevent long-term toxic stress. These are a few Stronger Starts videos that are hyperlinked. I can go through them. However, hopefully I'll show the deck later, so you will have them. They're both created in Spanish and English. So originally developed in Spanish, not translated, by the way, so just culturally appropriate. I've learned a lot. I'm a social worker by trade, so the idea of actually creating commercial, like, what is this? And how do we get the message out there? So I hope that as we reflect upon today, we remain hopeful. That we remain hopeful, bold, and courageous in creating the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments that we know will help to create the world we want to see, where we create systems that are ready to serve children, families, and communities, and not the other way around. Systems that are healing-centered, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive. I leave you with this. I know that this work is hard. I've been there, we've all been there, and we've gone through a couple years of HE double hockey sticks, right? And I know that this campaign and you all, every single one of you, will transform lives, because I stand before you today as a child who experienced 6 ACEs, possibly more, a child who several humans just like you created the safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments that allowed me to be on this stage today with you. A collective community of loving adults and allies who helped me know that what happened to me was not what was to define my future, nor would it define my children's future. This is an intergenerational campaign. So thank you all for what you do in service to our children, families, and communities. All right, it's lunchtime. Do you want to come back up?
Thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate everyone here and all the good work you do. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. And thank you to Michelle Fideli. She puts all of this magic together. We would not be able to have this without her. And I just am so glad I get to work with such an incredible human. Thank you, Michelle.